Look at those bagels. Perfect circle to hole ratio. Breakfast time, bit of study. If you are a coach or an athlete who does powerlifting, join Powerlifting Now. Have no affiliation to them, but very good website. It's like $12 a month, so pretty cheap, like €10 or something like that. Goes over pretty much everything: technique, programming, nutrition, pain rehab, meet day. Powerlifting is pretty simple on the surface. However, there is lots of nuance. So if you want to be better, you better learn. Today we have competition squat and competition bench on a menu. So I'm just sitting outside the powerlifting gym, getting in my pre-workout. So today we're starting off week 3 of this current training block. The last 2 weeks have just been a little bit kind of all over the place, I would say. That's kind of been the theme of like the last 2 months. But the first week, you know, I was in Ireland, did this session with my clients, which is a few videos back, and that session went on for fucking ages. Like it genuinely went on for hours. It took 2 hours before I got to bench. And then last week when I did the session, I only had like 45 minutes to get it done. You have one session which was taking like 3 hours, 4 hours to get 2 exercises done. Last week, got it all done in 45 minutes. So today I have time. Okay, so today it is Sunday, back onto my usual training schedule. Going forward, I really need to be more intentional with my training and more intentional with having my day scheduled properly, giving myself enough time to train, and even something as simple as making sure the gyms I'm training in are the same week to week. 2 days a week I'll be training in this powerlifting gym for my main squat and my main deadlift day, and then the other days I'm going to do in pure muscle because they have a little bit more equipment for my hypertrophy work, so it just kind of works in my favor. So part of me being more intentional with my training is gonna have something to do with the schedule, of course, but then even just in terms of how I am applying myself through it. Okay, so one thing I have been rushing has been the likes of like warming up for my heavier lifts. I have literally just been going in, getting straight underneath the bar, and then ramping up my sets. And that has not been enough for me to get sufficiently warm, like both in terms of like enough blood flow, but even just like getting more mobile. Like one thing that's been really off the last few weeks has been like my depth on squats. And the good part of that is just not warming up the areas enough. So there are some things that really help open up my hips. Things like doing single leg RDLs, trying my best to do some hip airplanes, doing some split squats. They really do help to get my hips open. And they're things I'm going to be making sure that I'm doing today, because today I'm going to be working up to hopefully around 210 for 5. But that remains to be seen, because I really have to just pay attention as well to how my warm-ups are feeling, right? It is built in me that every single time I go into the gym, I need to increase the load. And while, yes, sometimes I can do that, depending on how I'm adapting, depending on how my recovery is, it's just not possible all the time. And I suppose one thing that's been on my mind lately has been like what is hard work? So for me, I have no problem like, you know, pushing myself to my limit, but that's not hard for me because that's something that comes easily to me. What comes hard to me is not pushing myself to my limit. Probably sticking to the RPE that I'm meant to, right? I have no problem pushing past that, but trying to get it bang on the money is a little bit more difficult for me. Making sure that I'm doing my warm-up, that is probably a little bit more difficult to me. I'm impatient. I want to get straight to the work. So that is probably something that I need to work harder at. So there's probably going to be some things for you that you could probably work harder at. It could be your nutrition, could just be, you know, how you are actually training, the intensity of your sets, but it could be minute things. It could be the likes of being more intentional with your warm-ups, being more intentional with your training days, being more intentional with your recovery outside the gym. There could be a lot of low-hanging fruits, or even if you're at the upper level of your potential, there could be a lot of 1% that you're not really kind of gleaming, because your perception of hard work is only related to how hard you push yourself in the gym. So with that rant out of the way, I'm going to finish this. I'm going to go inside, I'm going to do my fucking warm-ups. I'll see you at the bar.
That's just a very simple warm-up that I've been doing like the last few months. Obviously there has been like days where I have skipped it like the last 2 weeks. The reason behind doing those actual drills there before getting underneath the bar. So you see there I started off with some glute bridges. That's essentially just to not activate my glutes, but just to essentially feel them and kind of drill in some hip extension. I did single leg as well there, just to ensure that I'm kind of utilizing both sides for hip extension. I did some dead bugs as well, so that's just to essentially cue my bracing. Then I was into some single leg movements there. So you see split squat there. I definitely find that helps with improving my depth on squat. I did some single leg RDLs as well. Find again, they just help me with internal rotation, which can be very important at the bottom of the squat as you're coming out of the hole. And then you'll see my attempts at hip airplanes. With the hip airplanes, one thing that they are doing is they are trying to, again, just kind of get some movement in through internal rotation. And you can see there I struggled big time with it. Like, there's a balance component of that there, but I also just have poor internal rotation at both of my femurs. One other good thing with using the likes of the single leg RDL or the hip airplane is because you're trying to balance on one foot, you're really thinking about what you're doing at the actual foot there. The one thing I am actually thinking about with my foot there is like pronating it, so letting the foot flatten and kind of going onto the inside of my arch, because that's going to help the foot increase in surface area and kind of improve your balance. And when you're coming out of the bottom of the squat, you don't necessarily want to keep on the outside of your feet at the very bottom. You kind of want to have the foot flatten a little bit, because that's going to, again, bias a little bit more internal rotation. It's going to allow the adductors to play a really strong role coming out of the bottom position. I'm going to get underneath the bar and I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to try to actually focus now on my working set. Now I think that could be the most amount of sets I've done with 210, so regardless of the RP, I'm pretty happy with that. Definitely the last set was a little bit tougher. One thing that definitely could be better still though is like my depth. The kind of 45-degree on angle is a little bit deceiving because I took some from the side and you could see that I was still kind of borderline with a good few reps, which is, yeah, look, it's not ideal. However, I'm trying to rely on the fact that I've never failed for depth in competition to carry me through, so it'll be there on the day, as I say. Anyway, I'm on to bench now. So similar kind of protocol here with bench. I have 5 sets, 1 set of 5 at 8 and then 4 back downs at around 3 to 4 reps. Try to keep the RP around 7 to 8. So one thing you'll notice with my bench setup today is I'm keeping my feet very far in front. Not necessarily very far in front, but like previously I would have kept my feet behind me when I was benching and having my feet like straight out. Whereas because like the new IPF bench rules, I can't get into my old setup as comfortably and kind of get as tight on the bench. So I'm trying to get a new setup for the last few weeks. It's definitely been getting better every time I do bench. So having my feet just like directly underneath my knees and then keep my feet very far forward. Let me use a little bit more kind of forward leg drive, which is allowing me to also kind of build a better arch. Now again, another kind of change to my bench press has been I'm trying to utilize a little bit more of a vertical bar path as opposed to the typical J-shaped curve. So one of the reasons for that is I'm trying to flare my arms out a little bit more. I touched on that in the last video, because obviously if your elbows are a little bit more tucked, they have to come down like this and then it leads itself to that kind of J-shaped curve. However, if you have your arms in a more kind of flare position, it's going to be a much straighter bar path. So this is essentially the kind of position will keep my feet in pretty much like parallel to each other. get into my usual grip width. So fingers just over the rings, or index finger just over the rings. Next from here, keeping my knuckles facing the ceiling, I'm going to pull myself under the bar, wedge my traps into the bar. My feet are pressing forward. Then from here, I'm thinking about externally rotating my elbows underneath the bar. Underneath the bar. Deep breath in, chest up. From here, I'm thinking about, as I lower the bar, driving into my feet on the way down, and driving the back on the way up.
Transmission.
So one thing you might notice me doing as I get towards the end of my sets on this exercise is I'm not fully extending my elbow. So again, the reason for this is just to get a little bit more work into the muscle when it is in the less position, because this part of motion is going to be like the most fatiguing, right? So if I was just to do full range of motion, going all the way through that rep as I get closer to failure, it will just cut my total reps and my total volume short. So if I just count my failure point as me getting to here, then I'm still gonna have this portion of the rep where I still have a little bit more energy and a little bit more kind of opportunity to get more tension into the muscle. So if my kind of weak point at the moment is like my lockout on my bench rest, you could say then, why don't I prioritize just getting more kind of movement in through that position? And the reason for it being is like this tricep extension is so far removed from doing a bench rest, both in terms of loading, both in terms of arm position. So in my opinion, it's better off for me to prioritize getting in more tension in through that portion of the rep where I'm going to be able to handle a little bit more of it and potentially get more growth. And as I get more growth, potentially as I'm doing my competition specific movements, my band bench press, my chain bench press, my actual like competition movement with heavy specific loads, because I have that extra muscle mass built now, potentially I'll be able to have a little bit more strength being built in those areas. So getting laterals in as my last movement of the day. So one of the reasons I'm doing these at the end after arms is because the shoulders are going to be stabilizing your arm when you're doing any kind of like bicep or tricep movement. So if I was to fatigue my delt as I go into this overhead position, it'd be very hard for me to maintain this position, right? Because like even this position, the medial delt is going to be flexed, it's going to be shortened. So trying to maintain this position and trying to have a high level of force output from my triceps is going to be very, very difficult. So doing your arms and then going into shoulders is going to be a much better way to sequence the exercises. At the moment, I'm doing laterals like 3 times a week. Again, they're a muscle group that you can do a fucking lot of volume with, and it's unlikely that they're really going to get too fatigued because you're never really getting them into too much of a lengthened position. To fully lengthen the license medial delt, you have to get the arm going behind the body, which you could do with like behind the back lateral raises. However, because you're going to be challenging more so in like the mid to short position, you're going to be able to handle a ton of volume before you really hit like a maximal recoverable volume. So I'm going to get into my final few sets of this. I'll see you at home. One part of this channel is I'm meant to also be a bodybuilder and not just a powerlifter. So it is now 1 month after I have wrapped up my mini cut. Body weight is sitting around the kind of mid 92s, so it's up around a kilo or so. And at the moment I am actually using Macro Factor to coach me. Previously I've been a MyFitnessPal whore, and now I'm just giving Macro Factor a go because it does adjust your calories like week to week depending on how your weight is trending. So I have set my kind of target weight as 96 kilos by April. So essentially where I was before I just started my mini cut. So I want to see how that goes. I'm happy to, you know, just let that kind of take the reins of my nutrition and really just focus on my training performance and have my body weight creep up pretty gradually. Like at the end of the day, if my performance is not trending with my weight, it doesn't really matter how fast I gain my weight. So happy enough with how my calories are, but I want to show you how the physique is looking. So if you don't want to see me in my posing trunks, you can skip to the next part of the video. Alright, so we are going to wrap up this vlog here. Hope you did enjoy it. One thing I do want to kind of document, showcase over the next few years before I step on the bodybuilding stage is just the process, right? The consistent process of it, right? Because like gaining muscle mass, especially as you get towards your kind of advanced years, like it just becomes very, very slow. And it does not necessarily seem like there's huge leaps and strides made every single session or every single week. But over months it does accumulate, and then especially over years it does, right? So I want to look back on this video in 2025, 2026 when I'm on stage again and be like, yeah, you were sticking to it, you're sticking to it. Now there might actually be another type of long form content coming out on the channel pretty soon as well, in an audio only format. If you're an OG follower, OG listener, OG subscriber, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. The boys are going to be coming back. That's all I'm going to say. And we have a lot of exciting things lined up. A lot of exciting people that we're going to be talking to over the coming few weeks that are going to be in your ear holes very soon. So if you want to stay in the loop,
make sure you follow the page, make sure you are subscribed, and make sure you like the video so I know that you know what's up. All right, that's it. I'm going to leave it there. Hope you have a great week, and going to talk to you soon.